excuse me, what if we had to change 7 pi over 4 in 2 degrees? Now this is easier. Some of you don't even need to write anything down for this, because you know that that right there is, that's 180.
Are we on the page or you made them?
No, I'm making these up just to kind of remind us of what we've already learned. So that's 180, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is 180 divided by 4? That's a common one. You're going to have it a lot. It's 45. So this is 45. So now I have to times it by 7. So 45 times 7 is 315 degrees. Don't be frightened of the arithmetic. It's easy. It's multiplication and division. Pi is 180. Divided by 4 is 45. Times 7 is 315. Okay? All right, so now we'll do a new problem. So we're number 5 on the back side of page 31. This is the only section we're going to do today, but it has, what, 5 problems in it. We're going to do this section today. So it says, find the missing variable for the following. S, that's an S, because your textbook uses S for arc length. So S stands for the length of the arc. Theta is the radian measure of the angle, and R is the radius. Okay? Now I want you to think back to what we talked about last time. I said that if the radius was 6 and our arc length was 6, that would be 1 radian. That's the definition of a radian. So then I asked you a question and I said, okay, well, what if the radius is 6 but the arc length is 12? And you said that would be 2 radians, right?
Yes.
Because every radius makes a radian. So 2 radiuses, radii, would make 2 radians. Well, the formula that kind of ties all that together says that the arc length is whatever the radius is times the number of radians you have. Arc length is radius times radians. See it? Arc length is the radius times the radians. So we're going to memorize that right there. Arc length is radius times radians. Now your book is going to write it like this. Same formula, perfectly okay. I like to remind myself this angle has to be in radians, not degrees. That's why I memorize arc length equals radius times radians. So when I look at problem A, number 5, it says that I have a central angle of 2 radians and a radius of 10. They give me that information and they want to know what the arc length is. Well, what's my formula? Arc length equals the radius times the radians. So what's the answer to the question? 20. It's as easy as that. So easy. One thing that's not in the notes is, let's say the radius was 10 inches, then the arc length would be 20 inches. Does that make sense to you? Whatever unit the radius is, that's the unit of the arc length. That's pretty darn easy. Let's look at B. What do they give me in B? They give me a central angle of 1.5, an arc length of 6, and we want to know the radius. So we use this picture for all of these problems. There's your radius, there's your angle, there's your arc length. So for problem B, this is what they've given me. What does my formula say? Arc length equals radius times radians. Yeah, it doesn't give, I mean, it's pretty easy. Now we want to know what the radius is, so we'll do 6 divided by 1.5, which is 4. So our radius is 4. All right, next. Same picture. We know the arc length is 10. Remember, S is the letter for arc length. I'm not sure, they probably didn't use A because it might get confused with area or something like that. So S is the letter for arc length. The radius is 4, and we want to know theta. So what's the formula say? Arc length equals radius times radians. So what is theta equal? That's like x. You can use x if you want. If you're uncomfortable with theta. 10 over 4, which is 5 halves, or 2.5, 2.5. I don't know. I think this is pretty easy. Let's look at D. Same picture. Radius is 10 and I want arc length. Does anybody see a little trickiness here? Mr. Schlebecker.
You gotta find the radians from the degree.
Bingo! If you are finding arc length, your angle has to be in radians. And that one is in degrees. Now remember, we just practiced this a minute ago. I know pi is 180, right? I want to know how many are 30. So I'll cross multiply. 30 pi equals 180x. I got 1/6 pi. Did anybody do that without doing all the work? Did anybody know that was 1/6 without doing the work? I bet you're really new at it, so maybe not yet, but soon you will, because you'll say, well, this is for 30 is 1/6 of 180, so wouldn't it be 1/6 of pi? Pi over 6? We got that. So you can always do the work, but sometimes you might not need to. Anyhow, this is pi over 6. Does anybody have a question about that?
I kind of got lost. So, like, where does that 10 come into play? Are we going to use that 1/6 and then multiply that by 10 to get our answer? I haven't gotten the answer to the problem yet. The question was find the arc length. I couldn't do the arc length until the angle was in radians. So pi over 6 is not the answer to the question. Pi over 6 is just the radian measure of the angle. Now I can use my formula. So arc length is the radius 10 times the radian measure of the angle, which is pi over 6. So multiplying, that's 10 pi over 6. Reducing that, it's 5 pi over 3. Now Max asked a good question because this happens all the time in these problems. This is a two-step problem.
The real problem is find the arc length. But I couldn't do that because before I could find the arc length, I had to get my angle into radians. So it's a two-stage problem. You're not done until you have found the arc length. Got it? That can be a little confusing. 2 steps. Got to get the radian measure first in order to use this formula. Okay? Now, there are other formulas, but here's the problem. You have to memorize them. And it's easier to memorize one formula and then change your radians into degrees rather than memorize separate formulas for the degrees. Because this isn't the end of the formulas. There's still a couple more we have to know. But there's one more problem in this section we need to know. Here it is. Theta is 90, S is 10 pi, and we want the radius. Anytime I see that picture, I think about this formula because that's an arc length. And that's my formula for arc length, right? What's the problem though? So I'm thinking about this formula. This formula is in my head. What's the matter? Do I know the radian measure of my angle? Well, I don't, but I kind of do because I know pi is 180. So what's 90? Pi, half pi, pi over 2. So you did that without doing any work, but you could do this. You could say pi is 180, so what's 90? Just like we did that one. You could do that work. You get 90 pi equals 180x, so x equals 90 pi over 180, which is pi over 2. Again, you don't have to do that work. You can logic it out. If pi is 180, then 90 is going to be half of that. Okay, what's my formula say? Arc length equals radius times pi over 2 multiply by 2. So 20 pi equals r times pi. And then divide by pi. So r equals 20. Your radius is 20. Quickly, we're going to do one more section because this one's easy too. If you have a book, open it up to 357. If you don't have a book, I'm going to reproduce it up here on the board. A lot of trigonometry is used. Oh, trigonometry is the most practical, I think, of all the mathematics. Well, calculus is, but we use trigonometry in all kinds of ways. One way is navigation, like giving directions to people. Have you all seen a compass before? You know what a compass looks like, right? This is north. This is south. This is east. And this is west. Yep, we're on part 6 now, using the compass that's in our textbook. Angle measures on the compass. Due north is 0. So if you tell your airplane pilot to fly on a heading of 0 degrees, he's going to go due north. East is 90, south is 180, west is 270. This line right here would be called what? If that's north and that's east, this would be northeast. And its angle measure would be 45. This one is southeast, and his angle measure would be 135. Kids, this is 90, right? So when I split it in half, isn't that 45? And there's another 45. And oh, when I come over here and do southwest, this will be another 45.
225.
And finally, when I do northwest, this will be another 45, 315. So all these lines I have drawn up here are 45 degrees apart. Does that make sense to you? Well, what if I split them again? So what if, in other words, let me get a different color. What if I drew in this line? Well, first of all, what would the angle be? Half of 45, which is 22 and a half. Because this is 45, right? So that's 22 and a half. Now, anybody know what we would call that purple line? North, northeast. Now, why it's called north, northeast is because it is, here's the northeast line, and it's on the north side of the northeast line. When I draw this one in, it is still in the northeast quadrant, but it is east northeast. In the northeast quadrant, this is the northeast quadrant. Here's the right in the middle, northeast. This line is toward the east side of northeast, and this line is toward the north side of northeast. See how that works? So let me put this one in. What do you think about that one? Now this is the southeast quadrant. So this would be east southeast, because here's the southeast line, and this one is on the east side of that line. What's this one? South southeast, because it is on the south side of the southeast line. Let's try this one. What's that one?
Southwest.
South, southwest. You're on the south side of the southwest line. This one would be west, southwest, because you're on the west side of the southwest line. This one, west, northwest, and finally, north, northwest. What is the distance between every single one of these? 22.5. So if you wanted to know what the angle measure was for this, one way to find it would be to take 180 and add 22.5. So what is that? 202.5? And if you wanted this one right here, you could take 315 plus 22.5, 337.5 if I'm adding right in my head. You get 360, which is right back to 0 again. Okay, so look at the problem. It says, we're on number 6. It says, find the angle measure that goes with east, southeast. So right here is east, southeast. What is that angle measure? Well, it would be 90 plus 22.5, 112.5. Southwest, well, that's an easy one. Southwest, I already have marked. It's 225. West, northwest. take 270 and add, what did we say we added for each one of these? 22 and a half. So what is that? 292.5. Did I add right? And then northwest, we already did. Northwest would be 337.5. Okay, everybody get the general gist of this? Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. Very easy. And now we're gonna pick up with our review. First, I need to hand out the page that I left out. So this is actually, the review sheet we were working on yesterday, review 1. We did, I think in this class, we did the first 4 problems, I think. 3 problems. If you turn the page, it goes like from 6 to 11 or something. I left the whole page out, so I'm giving you the page I left out. So I apologize for that. I don't know what happened. Totally operator error, my fault. That was a screw up.
You gonna be here.
See how it goes?
So I took this out.
Yeah.
Exam money review, right?
That's it.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's fine.
It was-
That's fine. There's no problem with that. The problem is with your review.
It's the exam menu review, correct?
No, it's exam 1. I mean, it's not that. This is, see how that's 5, and then this is 11. This is the page that should be in between 5 and 11. So that just needs to be stapled in there.
Staple it. All control.
No, okay, so this class, what we are now ready for, and again, I am not working through review 1 with each class. I don't have enough time to do that. So we're getting through review 1, class by class. You're just picking up where the last class left off. So you haven't personally done it, but it's all available on video. And if you come in during flex, we're working on review stuff too. But I'm going to get it all video. So please go, we're in review sheet 1, go to number 21. We are ready for number 21 in review sheet 1. I can't remember if I told you guys the other day that part of the exam is multiple choice. Did we talk about that? Okay, so I want everybody to understand something. I know that you are all very stressed with all your tests and everything going on. I know that for some of you, this exam, which is worth 20% of your semester grade, is going to make a difference. For some of you, it's going to be passing or failing the semester. For some of you, it's going to be the difference between a D and a B or something. So it's important. This test is important. But I hope at this point you trust me, because we have not taken a test, whether you've done well or not. We haven't taken a test in this class that I haven't prepared you for. Everything on the test is on the review sheet, right? Well, the exam's the same thing. If it's in this packet, it's on the exam. If it isn't in this packet, it isn't on the exam. There are no surprises. So if you want to do well on the exam, you have to know how to do everything in the review sheet. Because everything you don't know how to do is going to be something you miss on the exam, because this is all there. So when I look at question 21, and it says, list the possible routes, find the routes. That is a question on the exam. Some of them are multiple choice, some of them are free response. I know for a fact this question is free response. 20 of the exam questions
are the same no matter what pre-calculus class you're in.
How many questions?
So 20 of the questions, at least 20, I think more than 20 of the questions are on the honors exam, the academic exam, and your exam. It's all here. You know exactly what you need to know. All right, so it says, list the PRRs. Now, I call them PRRs. No other teachers call them that, so we wrote out the word possible rational roots. That's what PRR stands for. So what are the PRRs in this problem?
1, 2, 3, 6.
Factors of 6,
Okay.
right? We are on number 21 in review sheet 1. 21. The PRRs are factors of the constant, so these are the factors of 6, divided by factors of the leading coefficient, which is 3 or 1. Now, in most of the problems we did, that was a 1. So some of you got in the habit of ignoring it. You can't ignore that first number. It's the last factors over the first factors. Okay? So what does that mean? That means that you have 6 over 1, 3 over 1, 2 over 1, and 1 over 1. But you also have 6 over 3, 3 over 3, 2 over 3, and 1 over 3. So all the combinations of these numbers over these numbers. If you know the rule, it's super simple. Factors of that over factors of this. Now, it says, find the roots. You will find the roots maybe by factoring. Does this problem factor?
Yeah.
When I look at it, I see a possibility. Don't you see 3 and 6 and 3 and 6? So maybe it does factor by grouping. So what would I take out of the first two? 3x squared. And what would I be left with? X minus 2. Kids, I'm looking at the first two terms. You've done this since Algebra 1. It's called factoring by grouping. I take out the first two I group the first two terms and take out what I can. Now, what about the last two? What can I take out of them? A negative 3. And that leaves me, I took out a negative 3, so that leaves me with x minus 2. Is this good news?
Mm-hmm.
It's joyous news because they match. When I write down the match, when I write down x minus 2, I write it one time. I don't square it, I don't write it twice, I don't put a 2 in front of it, I write it down. Write down the match. Then I write down everything else, which is 3x squared minus 3. Now, do you notice anything when you look at 3x squared minus 3? You can take out a 3. So I'm going to put it out in front because that's where I like to put my numbers. If I pull a 3 out, I'll be left with x squared minus 1. And x squared minus 1 is special because it is x minus 1x plus 1. So the question said, find the roots. Look at these parentheses. Tell me what x equals. These are the roots. X equals 2, 1, or negative 1. This is the list of possibilities. This is the list of actual answers. Free response question. Your work's going to get graded. That'll be on the colored part of the test. Be a calculator question even though you don't
All right, number 22. Round to the nearest thousand. All right, let's take a look at this problem, guys. Where is the variable? Up in the exponent. And what do we do when our variable is up in the exponent? We take the logarithm of both sides. And since there's an e in it, it has been suggested that we ln both sides. So I am going to write ln on both sides of the equation. And then I'm going to notice, what do I have right here? I cancel, because I have an ln and an e parked right next to each other. So that's gone. So 3x minus 1 equals ln 5. Now remember, you're trying to figure out what x is. So think about solving this equation. Don't you have to add 1? And then divide by 3? So we are going to type into our calculator this. And I would suggest, those of you that are still struggling a little with your calculator, type ln 5 equals. Just get a number. Now add 1 to that, equals. Divide by 3 equals. Your answer is 0.8698. Now, I don't care how you type it in as long as that's the answer you get. So you don't have to type it in the way I told you. But if you're not getting that answer, you better type it in the way I told you. So ln 5, get a number, add 1 to it, get a number, divide it by 3. It gives you 0.8698. Gotta have, close those, gotta have that in parentheses.
Because why does it? So when I type it in, I just like if you type in just ln 5 and close parentheses and add 1.
It only divides the 1 by 3 instead of the whole thing. That's why you have
And then it adds
to
that together.
I get it now, bro.
A bet?
Okay,
Big bet.
to the nearest dollar. How much would you have if you invested this amount of money compounded weekly for 10 years? I just this morning, because I am the wussiest teacher of all, I just this morning wrote the formulas on the front cover of the exam. So that formula is going to be on the front cover of the
Is
exam.
that the one formula?
And PERT will be on there, that's it.
That's it.
Everything else you got to know.
Part.
Now, I know it's that formula because it says in the problem compounded weekly. Okay, I graded your tests. You know I did because the scores are in. And some of you used the wrong formulas. There's no partial credit for using the wrong formula. You did the whole problem entirely wrong. If it says compounded weekly, daily, monthly, yearly, this is the formula. The only time you would use PERT in a money problem is if it said compounded continuously. Otherwise, PERT is every other kind of problem, and that's the money problem. So here we go. How much would you have if you invested $12,000? So I am investing $12,000. 3.5% interest. And again, I just graded your papers and probably 20% of you put in 3.5 as R. No, it's 3.5%, which is what decimal? 0.035. You have got to use the decimal. That's entirely with your test back, so you can actually see the mistake. Compounded weekly.
for 10
I
years.
don't know if
right?
you've done that.
But isn't it for 10 years?
How many weeks in a year?
52.
52. Oh my gosh, we have to know there's 52 weeks in a year for 10 years. So all the numbers are plugged into the formula. I like to take care of this right away, so I'm just going to make my exponent 520. Do I need logarithms? No, this is what some of you fondly referred to as a type-in problem. You just type it in. You don't have to do anything. You just type in 12,000 parentheses, 1 plus 0.035 divided by 52, close parentheses, raised to the 520th, $17,026.81.
You still lost your dollar money.
Money should always go to the nearest cent. Got it? If you keep getting the wrong numbers when you're typing this stuff in, what should you do? Time to flex, right? Let's get the calculator issue straightened out. All right, number 24. Find the growth constant for a strain of bacteria. This is going to be a PERT, right? And I know 386 grows into 1025. Let me say it again. This is the starting number. This is the ending number. So 386 is growing into 1025, and it is taking 3.8 hours. Is that okay with everybody? Now, this is not a straight type-in problem because your variable is up high, which means we're going to need logarithms, right? But not yet. What do we have to do first? Divide. So 1025 divided by 386 is e to the 3.8r. I'm going to divide. Now some of you go ahead and type that in on the calculator. Fine, as long as you don't round it off. It's fine. Now we need to get this down. So once again, we'll ln both sides. Right? So we have ln this fraction equal to, look over here, 3.8r. So how are you going to get your answer? You're just going to take this guy right here, whatever that is, ln 1025 divided by 386, and you're going to divide it by 3.8. And your answer to the nearest thousand is 0.257.
Wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense.
What doesn't make sense about it?
So like, when I did it, I divided like 0.386 and I got 2.53.
I don't know what, this is what you need to be dividing. I don't know what you're dividing, but this is what you need to be doing. You're taking the natural log of this fraction and dividing it by 3.8.
Okay, yeah, I see what I did wrong.
Yeah, you just type in this, divided by 3.8, and it's going to give you the answer.
It's all right. As long as you're making progress. All that matters, right through it.
All right, gotta get a couple more done here. Oh my gosh. Number 25. Lord help us. This is on the Algebra 1 semester exam. If you miss this one, look forward to some public humiliation. Do not miss this problem. This is the equation of a line, Zion.
it's the equation of a line. Directions say write the equation of a line. So you are probably thinking along these lines. You must first find the slope. And slope is found by taking y minus y over x minus x. So we get 10 over 5, which is 2. So the slope is 2. Now you are either going to say, you're going to pick a point, I'll pick this one. You're either going to say 11 equals 2 times 3 plus b, or you're going to say y minus 11 equals 2 times x minus 3. You don't have to do both. So whichever way works for you, that's what you're going to do. Either way, the answer is y equals 2x plus 5. Either way, that's the answer. That is an exam question. Number 26. What do I do to simplify this? Foil. This is a foil. So 12, that's outside. That's first. Outside is 6i. Inside is negative 4i. And last is negative 2i squared. Foil. Again, first year algebra. Now it gets a little second year algebra because you got to remember what about I squared? That's negative 1. I squared is negative 1. So this is really plus 2. Because it's negative 2 times negative 1. These two are 2i when you combine them, and you got your 12. So your final answer is 14 plus 2i. So you gotta remember, everybody in here knows how to FOIL. You gotta remember that I squared is negative 1. Because every time you FOIL one of these, you're gonna get an I squared. 27. Again, first year algebra problem. Find the final cost of an item if there is a 20% discount and a 7% tax, and the original price is $32.50. So remember, you start with $32.50, the original price. You're going to multiply it by two things. You have a 20% discount, right? Take 20% off, and you're going to add on a 7% tax. Now remember, what decimal represents a 20% discount? 80, 0.8. 0.8 is what you want to multiply by. Because if they're taking off 20%, they're leaving 80%, right? This is what you're paying. You're paying 80% of the original cost. Now we're adding on tax. So what is the decimal that represents an add-on of 7%? 1.07. So this number is 1 minus 20%, and this one is 1 plus 7%. That obviously will be a calculator problem.
How are you dividing it up?
And it'll be 2782. So your answer would be 2782. All right, we got time for one more. I think one more.
Miss Ford, if you did that and then did, like if you took 30, like let's say it was just a 20% discount, and then you did 32.50, and then times it by 0.2, and then subtracted it
Yep.
from, okay.
That'll work. All right, last problem, here we go. So you look at this problem and the first thing that should pop into your mind is
Line.
it factors,
Yeah,
doesn't it? How does that factor?
6 and 1.
6 and 1, 7 and 1, x minus 7, x plus 1. It's not the same thing. Now, I'm going to draw a number line. Every time you have an inequality, you're going to draw a number line. And that number line is going to have 2 open dots on it.
-1.
The open dots are going to be at -1 and 7. Right? Now there's the real way to do this and there's the shortcut. As long as there's no squares here, you can use the shortcut. And the shortcut is, if that's a greater than,
Oh, no, it's right.
we're shaded out. So automatically we can say our answer is everything less than -1 or greater than 7. If you want to do it the real way,
Plug a number in.
you plug a number in and see if it works, and shade or don't shade. Now, final comment. Don't pack up, I'm going to make you stay late. Listen, this is a multiple choice question, I think. Therefore, the answer may or may not look like this. The answer may be written like this. So be prepared to recognize the answer if it appears in interval notation. Remember, we're taking the same exam as everybody is. And so the other classes, the higher classes, focus a whole lot more on interval notation than I have. So those answers might be written in interval notation.
It's like even the Precal honors.
They're taking the same test you are for the first like 20 questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the free response.
Are you dividing up the calculator questions?
All right,